Okay,
Bless you.
Bless you.
and one more, bless you.
Thank you.
Let's call this work session to order, please. Roll call.
Vianney,
Here.
Casanello,
Here.
Hader,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Gallagher,
Here.
Okay, do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item, agenda. I'd like to make a friendly amendment to the agenda, if I could. I'd like to add a line item to discuss our snow policy, since we had a issue with the last snow. And last report I saw, we're looking at 5 inches on Monday, next Monday, but then it got wiped off. So there's something in the models that are floating around. So I would like to talk about that tonight, if there are any objections. Okay. We'll add that as item 6. So we'll start off with item 1, the monthly financial report.
Okay, so the financial reports, one of the notes I do want to bring to your attention, I'm not sure if I brought it up in the last meeting since it happened, but today we did receive the taxes that were corrected with the cigarette tax. I believe I had spoken to you all that there was a underpayment made for December, but that has been corrected as of today. It's not showing up in this report because this report was printed out last week, so it'll show up in next week's report. It still puts us in a good position when it comes to hitting the budget number.
Roberto, how much was that? Do you recall?
So the amount that they owed us the prior month was about 7,000 when it comes to that. So in total, the town this month can receive a $17,000 tax.
Thank you.
Tracy Lynn?
I was going to say real quick. So I know it was an error on their end. Everything has been realigned, so that shouldn't happen again.
Yes. So yes, Vice Mayor. So what happened was that I get these monthly reports submitted. Being here for as long as I have been, I was able to look at the number and know something was off. Per trends in the past years, it shouldn't have been off by that much. So I went ahead and we are part of the Cigarette Tax Board, which they are the ones that enforce the code and the taxing is done properly. I reached out to the main person, Juan Rengal. He was able to give me an answer within 3 hours. With their new system, they were able to calculate and actually they realized that the vendor had underreported on 6 different jurisdictions and 5 overreported in 5 other ones. So essentially my simple question brought up this issue for them. So they were able to track it, correct it. So yes, it shouldn't happen again, but then again, there was a vendor error depending on who's doing the reporting. But obviously with us having eyes on it and the Cigarette Tax Board being able to have this new system where they're able to find the information as quickly as possible, we hope to avoid that again.
Perfect. Thank you.
I don't know if there's any specific questions on what is on the budget.
I just want to say thanks for your tenacity.
Okay.
I have one question. Just
More out of curiosity, obviously, with the poor weather that we had, we did have, and I know we're getting ready to put a new RFP out for trash collection. When we have an interruption in service like that, where they kind of literally, immediately went from, 2 days a week to 1 day a week, and they don't collect as often, and I would say certainly didn't hit the whole town, because I know my whole block did not get hit for an entire week. And then when they did come, they knocked over things, but that's a different story. So just curious, do we withhold payment on that, or how do we handle that?
No, so that's a good question. And actually, the RFP is out, so we will start to get. We have a mandatory meeting on Thursday for any potential bidders. There's something we will bring up, the town manager will bring up to the contractors that are going to be bidding on this. But I believe the way the contract's written up, that as long as they make an announcement to us, let us know what their way of correcting the issue, they're within the contract. But that's something we could definitely bring up with them when we have them here, because they are actually going to be part of the rebidding process as well. Yeah, but unfortunately, the way the contract's written up, as long as you're making every effort to do the work or to redo the work, I know there was, as you stated, there's some places that were missed. I know Ms. Kim is in discussions to have that, that question answered as to why they were missed and whatnot. We haven't heard back from the representative, Dan, but we could go after, see if there's any remedies we could do for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything you want to highlight on this, or you just looking for questions? Since they're
We on the budget amendment or just on the financial report?
financial report, sorry. Yeah, I was moving ahead.
On the financial, I was just going to answer any questions if anyone has specific questions on it.
I was just going to piggyback off what Matt brought up, if that's all right. For the trash, you said the RFP's already out. Is there, I'm not sure if the contracts are clearly laid out in the RFP bid, right? No, that will be finalized after we select someone, or, okay.
Yes, so in the RFP, we have laid out what we are envisioning for the services, what we want to receive services on.
Okay.
So that would be like how many units we have, what types of units they are, how often the pickup, the preferred days of service, and then we would go through and create a contract and go through that process once we've identified somebody.
Okay, so maybe we make a note that, like, in the contract, we need to make sure that there's like certain expectations with timeline and time frame, because I know that they gave our town clerk very little time to announce when they would be coming through, and we need to be able to communicate as well. So just wanted to piggyback off that conversation. All right, thank you.
Alexander?
Roberto, business license tax, I see here we budgeted, this is income 250K, but we are currently at 10%. And the comments here says collection of new businesses and delinquent businesses. It doesn't say anything about existing business. So are we behind, or, I mean, will we?
You talk about line item 3120-02
Correct.
for 250. No, Councilman Alexander, these taxes aren't actually collected until May.
Okay.
So April 30th is the deadline. But what you're seeing right now is new businesses that are opening up, and a few businesses that have actually gone ahead and renewed their license sooner rather than waiting until April 30th.
Okay. All right.
And just to add to that, Roberto sends out the letters to all of our existing businesses in February, and so you will start to see each month from here out, that number will start to increase, and it's because he'll send those letters out, they'll start paying them early.
Okay, thank you. I was just going off the comments and made it seem as if it doesn't include existing businesses, so that's why. Okay.
No, and a good question, and I guess as we're on it, just like the bank stock, you guys will see that around May, mid-May. That's the bank, the franchise tax that we collect, but that comes in around like May, June.
Okay.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Roberto. Hello, everybody. So going back to the RFP for the trash recycling and haulage. So in the RFP, Emily, it's no different than the service that we envision or that we get today. Is that the bottom line to start with, I guess?
That's what we're going to start with. I will be fully transparent with all of you. I had a meeting with Roberto and our current trash representative back in the fall, and they said that they would submit a bid, but that we need to be expecting an increase in pricing because of just where they are at with their company, gas prices, service levels. So we are expecting that the bids are going to come in higher for what services we currently have today. If that's the case, then Roberto and I are going to be reviewing the bids and we'll bring them to council and have a discussion if it's cost prohibitive to continue with the way we currently operate trash services, if we need to reevaluate a different level of service, meaning 1 day a week versus 2 days a week. But we'll bring that to you when the time comes. Right now, we're asking for the same level of service we have today.
How long was our previous contract?
4 years? It was 4 years. So 4 years ago, give or take, the then town manager was in discussions with the town consortium to get together with other towns in the Northern Virginia area and try to get a better deal on a trash contract. It was noticed during that consortium and discussion that we had a very good deal as it stood, and so we extended that contract with the service provider we have, and we removed ourselves from the consortium. So this is going to be a new contract. We're in it just ourselves. We're not teaming up with other localities. This is just for the town.
Any other questions for Roberto on the?
Yes. Joe.
Go ahead,
here.
Joe.
Hey, Roberto, so I understand there's a cycle to when we get these payments, right? Is there something you can do in the notes section for like the bank stock tax, what month that's due, and how, when the business license tax, put a little note in there, or maybe just use an M for May or an A for April or something like that? Is that possible?
Yeah, I could do that. I can add on the notes when to expect them.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone good? Okay. Now we'll move on to the budget amendment resolution.
Okay. So normally when we do amendments, I always like to do the staff report to try to capture all the questions that you may have or kind of explain to the public and to council why these amendments are being proposed. On this amendment, I started off with the biggest one, which is obviously our park sidewalk. After meeting with our town manager and the engineer felt that this park sidewalk, once it starts in the spring, it should be completed in this fiscal year. So in essence, that's the reason why I went ahead and just wanted to amend the budget for the full contract amount plus a 30% contingency. That's standard protocol. The price was about 800. I can't remember the number. Was it 836,000, I believe? We did do a 30% contingency per the engineer just to be safe. That's just for one of those situations, kind of with the gas line over here where it happened. There was a gas line rupture and we had to get it fixed. So since we had put in that contingency, we had the funds already allocated towards anything like that. We're doing the same thing on this project. So that is why you see some of the biggest amendment there. But again, this is using all of the funds are coming from the ARPA funds, which is what we always had discussed and geared this money towards. It'll take almost about half of what those ARPA funds are for right now. But that is what that First Amendment will address. I don't know if there's any questions on that.
This is the first item, so the town center master plan, the 50,000 that's coming over, that would cover the cost of, I read your summary there, I was sort of bringing that over, but that would be if we have to pay Katie to help with the RFP, if we want to put out RFP this term and.
Correct. So the original budget called for 200,000 from ARPA to be used, 150,000 towards the park sidewalk and the architecture engineering portion, and 50,000 to go towards the town center master plan for any engineering costs to finalize it. With this change, was what we did, we went ahead and moved any of the unused funds from the architectural engineering portion of the park sidewalk, which is about 110,000. And we moved that into the part, make it part of the construction. And we still kept that 50,000 for the town center master plan there.
In theory, that can help us through if we want to put an I know we're going to get into that discussion later about that, but in theory, hopefully that would be enough to cover what administrative costs we would need if we wanted to put an RFP together.
Correct.
Okay, great.
That's at the behind it, yep.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay. I'm not sure if there's any specific questions on the staff report. So I'm gonna try to talk about some of the things that they're on here. But if you want to stop me with any more questions, let me know. The other amendment that we're doing as well, proposing is obviously the meals tax. When we first worked on this budget, we were unsure how when restaurants were open, how well they would do and whatnot. Trend wise, if you guys can see it during our actuals, it's only collecting for December, and we're already past the 50% mark. It's trending to end around 1,375,000, maybe a little bit more depending on what opens up from here till then, but definitely want to capture that to use for some of the expenditures. Transient occupancy tax, again, this was only due when we budgeted. It was not even it was a year, but we still weren't unsure how the hotel would do with this occupancy tax. Numbers wise, though, I could tell you that they're very consistent, a little bit ahead of what they were the prior year. So we're going to propose to bring it up to 225. Last year they actually ended it in a little bit higher than that, but we are confident that they'll hit that. The other number 4, the amendment 4, is with the VACO VML investments. Obviously, we made this change last year to go more to a short term with the VML VACO investments. As you can see, it's done great on the interest returns. And then the interest on banks deposits, these are, again, with the town funds of how the Fed rates are so high, taking advantage of that as well. So we actually want to capture that. The public safety, number 5, that is basically to address the surplus sale of the vehicle that the PD department did, as well as there's an increase in the 599 law enforcement grant. And some of those funds will be being used to go towards the expenditure on the uniform supply side.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
About that? Again, I'm not picking up on you, Chief, or anything like that. I'm just trying to understand this. So that $5,305 was a revenue as a result of selling the old cruiser, correct? So we are putting that money, moving it to the expenditure of uniform and supplies, increasing that budget amount. I would have thought, again, I'm using logic here. Maybe this is the norm how it's done, but I would have thought that that revenue maybe can offset expenses like the cruiser that we're about to purchase or repurchase, or what have you, instead of increasing a budgeted expenditure line item, right? If you need the money and so forth, that's a different conversation. But again, I'm not just in general, right? if there is an unexpected revenue, right, it doesn't mean that that amount should go and increase an expenditure line item, right, and in excess of what has already been budgeted. So maybe you can elaborate on that.
So, well, yeah, a totally good question. But you got to understand too that we have a 5-year CIP plan. That those vehicles are already been the monies have been allocated for specifically for those vehicles. Now the purchase of those vehicles also will require the supplies to outfit them. That we try to capture there too. Obviously, if council chooses to move those funds to another expenditure line item, we could do that. But considering that we have a really high reserve currently, I would like to see that the police department to be able to use those funds, since in theory as well, when they purchase the vehicles, it's under the department as well.
I understand if we did not budget enough, we need more money. If the chief needs more money, I understand. But just because there is an additional revenue and just increasing that expenditure line item, the budgeted line, it just, if there's a need for it, that's fine. I'm just trying to understand, the logic behind it. But,
Okay.
thanks.
Anyone want that?
Can I ask the question maybe in a slightly different way? Because I think I see the point. Is there, maybe question, Chief, this is a question for you. If we increasing that, to a spend, are there things that you have on a, for lack of a better way of putting it, a proverbial wish list that you say, hey, if those funds became available through some means that you would prefer to use that expenses towards that type of stuff?
There could be, but we currently don't have that set aside for that, and there's really nothing in that. The board the council did a really great job of funding us last year and what our plans was for this year. So there's nothing outside of that aspect that we would put that to. But again, with the line item, wherever Roberto sees fit to put it, it's not a case of I need that. We're overspending. We're not. We're actually in good shape on that budget. But that line item is very flexible, that we can point it in different directions. It's not line item specific that we have to buy a cruiser with it or we have to buy a specific piece of equipment. When you put it into that line item, any type of equipment, so if we have a piece of equipment that breaks today that we didn't expect, then it's not really the wish list side of it. It's the fact that, hey, that money is now available in a very flexible line item that we can expend it on. So I think
Comes like a mini insurance policy. Almost.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a buffer.
Exactly. So, but no, we wouldn't have this magical wish list and we would put it there. We would be transparent about, hey, this is what we want to do with it, and then point it at that direction rather than put it in a flexible line item like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Basically, what I'm trying to point out is we should be operating within the confinement of our budget, right? Again, if there is a need for it, if we did not budget enough or something comes up, I understand, but that's what I was trying to point out, but go ahead.
I was just going to reiterate that there's checks and balances in preparation for that. It's about having a line item that's easily accessible for those types of needs if necessary.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And I know you want to say something. I'm just going to bounce back to this real quick. Also, we budget for the vehicles. So we're putting the horse before the cart. I can't put a figure on how much we are going to get from a car. So if I under budget in the hopes that we sell a car and we make $5,000 and we only make $2,000, now I've actually under budgeted myself during the budget process, and we can add the $3,000 to it, but I'm still got to come to you all for the other $2,000. So that would be kind of putting the cart before the horse, as we say in the Shenandoah Valley. See what I'm saying?
So what was the budget that we adopted? Was that anticipating the sale of the vehicle and additional $5,000 some dollars? No.
But no, because we can't say what we're going to get for it.
Okay.
With Finance Committee, as they'll be glad to tell you, we had discussions in what we were hoping for. But again, and we met those expectations. We actually surpassed them. But as the car market is now becoming more available, selling that same car next year might be half the price. So basically, with your analogy, and I get it, we're actually putting the cart before the horse. We have to budget now for later rather than hoping that we can recover that money through a secondary sale. And then going back to what the vice mayor said is that, yes, it is a flexible line item, which gives us that ability to buy different pieces of equipment, but still remain true to the line item.
And again, if it's something that you need, what have you, it's
No,
not-
there's no emergency.
Yeah,
We are
yeah.
tracking fine. There's no issues, but, you know, it was a really good choice on Roberto's point.
Okay.
All right.
Mary?
Thank you. So I just really feel like this is an opportunity to reflect that this was an income we weren't expecting and we needed to place it somewhere. So we chose to put it somewhere that would have some flexibility for chief to use. Just because it increased now through this budget amendment does not mean that it will forever be altered to this like price point for the future. This is just like an accommodation of something because Roberto's goal as a treasurer is to have our expenses meet zero with our income. So that's the goal and placing it somewhere. So, and like you said, there's no emergency. We've already allocated money thinking ahead to purchasing these cruisers and everything. So there isn't really a need for that money in that line item specifically.
Correct.
So, all right, thank you.
Everyone good?
Okay, amendment number, proposal number 6 is to adjust for the events. This year, if you guys are aware, I know you guys are aware, we're able to get a part-time event person. And also kind of taking some of the financial aspects more in line now with the deputy as well, clerk, to assist with the collections of revenues. You can see there's a huge increase with the sponsorships. I'd like to say that could, you know, it's due to the fact that we have someone that's all they work on versus having our town manager try to do that and zoning and town manager stuff. So that's just to adjust for those revenues. Number 7 is just more, I have never really budgeted a convenience fee. That is for the usage of the credit card payments. There was always a convenience surcharge. In practice, I've never really wanted to budget that because it's really been an unknown. We've only been doing it for a year. But this is just to kind of address that. Convenience fees that we get charged, that we collect, but we also pay out to the vendors for credit card usage. So that's what that is addressing. Number 8 is reimbursement for a deductible that we got returned to the town for a vehicle, I believe a vehicle accident. I don't remember which one, but it was a minor one that just returned the funds back. Obviously, I wanted to get back to the supplies because we used the funds from there to pay for that deductible. The line item the amendment number 9, this was due to a private event that was being held. Our officers were yeah. No, so this was just due for the event that was held at Great Maine for the officer. It was denied? Okay.
But it was a special event.
It was a special event fee that would have required our officers to patrol a little bit more often. There would have been a special event going on at that location. Line item number 10 this is for the DMV Select Grant. I don't know how many, Councilman Gallagher and Councilman Bayene, the town was, recently the past year and a half, we were suspended from participating in the DMV Select Grant. This was during the prior chief's tenure and officers. Well, this past year, with the assistance of chief, we've been trying to get back on the DMV Select program. We were granted recognition that we could go ahead and participate this year. So this is just to address that line item. And on the expenditure side, it's just showing what it would cost to do for the officers to participate in this. I don't know if there's any specific question on this item.
I'm not familiar what the DMV Select program is, so.
You want to speak on that?
Each year, Councilman, in February, police departments, sheriff's offices are allowed to apply for what we refer to as a DMV grant through NHTSA, the National Highway Safety Transportation Council. And you can apply for pretty much unlimited funding, but funding that you can use. You can't just like put a big number out there and do what you can. And so we budgeted for this year with them to do select enforcement. Select enforcement has to deal, our portion of the grant for is speed enforcement and occupant safety and restraints. So basically seatbelts and speed. And so it allows the officers to make overtime for the sole purpose of those two programs. And of course, with that grant comes responsibilities for us to take part in impaired driving, drive sober, get pulled over, click it or ticket, which are great initiatives and great programs to have in the area. And of course, we only have to show a matching portion to that, but we can use in-kind portions. So we use our fuel bill that we would generate normally, no extras. So basically, it's money that the town doesn't have to put forth. And it gives the officers not just an opportunity to make some overtime, but to actually keep Haymarket a pedestrian-friendly town. And like Treasurer Gonzalez said, is that we had been disavowed from that, but we were allowed to come back in after some meetings with DMV and a lot of work on our part to assure them that their program would be implemented correctly and overseen correctly. And so we're in our first quarter. We're going to be reporting our first quarter reimbursement tomorrow, and we were allocated $12,686 for this year. The lieutenant and myself have already went to training, mandated training for next year's grant, which would begin in October, but we have to fill out the application in February. And we will ask for more than we did this time. We just wanted to get a good foundation under us this first time back and make sure that we were solid and that our budgeting was correct, that we weren't asking for more than we could actually do. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it, I guess.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mary, go ahead.
Thank you. It didn't specify, I think it says a line item number, but I just want to make sure that since this is a revenue from the DMV grant, that it is going into like police department expenditures, correct? Because I see here it says the salary and wages, the FICA, Medicare, I'm assuming, yes. And then the convention and education, that is also for the police department, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the easiest way to tell that, Councilman Ramirez, is with the PD department, it always starts with a 311.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, now, Chief, you're talking about we had to do some type of a match in kind, and you were using our fuel bill. How does that play with our selective services line item that the town funds?
Okay, and I guess I should have followed up on that on the first question. Once the department became disavowed from being able to apply for the program, council saw fit to fund the program from the town side itself, from its revenue base, which we did again this year because at the time of the budget, we weren't sure that we were going to be accepted back in. That was one. Two is the grant doesn't start until October. And obviously, our fiscal budget starts in July. So we still wanted to keep Haymarket a pedestrian-friendly town. So to answer your question, what we did was we stopped using the select enforcement. We just were in Finance Committee last meeting, but I don't remember exactly what I have in that line item. But what I had spoke briefly with Councilman Passanello and Vice Mayor Tracy Lynn is to possibly use it for some special enforcement sides, especially dealing with the crosswalks, because the crosswalks are not part of that grant. We're speed and occupant protection. So I can't really throw guys at that problem paying with that. But still, I wasn't trying to plan a spin down. I don't believe in spin downs. I believe you use what you need to use. So that was where we had left it at. So that's what we would more than likely use that line item for, but I'm not expecting to spend it down. And I would venture to say that we probably only spent 3,000 of the 10,000 allocated, but that's just a dart in the board. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I look at it, the sole purpose is for employee morale to, give them the opportunity for overtime. With this, like you said, we can offset it into now looking at crosswalks, maybe bus stops for the children.
Absolutely. And there is another portion of that I didn't speak on. The grant dictates the times that we can work. We use what's called heat maps, which specifically has enforcement issue from the past that we use as a metrics to use enforcement today. And so there's certain times and there's one day of the week where we're not allowed to use the grant. So if we do have a problem in those areas, we can allocate a person to go out and be paid from the select enforcement in the town aspect on the line item. So just one more way.
Quick question.
Vice Mayor?
Are we utilizing, or is there a tier system within the grant? Did we qualify for the maximum portion of the grant?
What we did was sit down and budget what we felt that we could use. I mean, in my younger days, I would have worked every day if they would have let me overtime, but there was very little out there. But today, family is really important, and so you can't ask your guys to do so much. And of course, we have other projects that the guys are involved with, so we don't want to overburden them. We don't want to sit there and say, we have this pot of money, you have to get out here and work, because now we're taking away from their family life side. So it's not really a benefit to them anymore. It's more of a demoralization. But the money that we asked for, we was budgeted for. We were allocated with.
So you take what the grant offers and you match it to what our department can utilize and what our families
Correct,
need.
correct. And there's other aspects of that grant, which includes training, community outreach, and equipment. And now we're probably going to look at a couple of those on this grant cycle that we've already been discussing with the town manager, the treasurer, and Lieutenant Davis. So the money that we're going to ask for in the upcoming year is going to be more, but it's going to be spread out in different ways, not all for speed or occupant restraints. So, yes, ma'am.
Hey, Joe?
Yes, I just want to point out and congratulate the chief and Roberto for working on this and getting us back in the game so that we're in compliance with the state and we can move forward. So that's one comment. The other comment, also for the chief, I'll give you some more kudos, is you're in the grants game, and that's something we've always talked about to help fund operations. This year in 2023, if everybody read the newsletter, they would see that the PD got a significant number of grants fulfilled, and that helps offset some other costs for us and our taxpayers in town. So I think it's kudos there, working with Roberto as well. So I have two questions, Chief.
Yes, sir.
So with respect to the DMV grant itself, and I kind of heard some of the discussion. So whatever monies are left over, essentially that stays with the state, is that correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's basically a match, or not a match, but reimbursement on a quarterly basis?
Yes, we could opt for monthly or quarterly, but there is an immense amount of documentation that's needed to file for the reimbursement, and we felt that it would be better by the quarter to where we could, sit down and go over everything one time every quarter, rather than every month at the end of the month trying to get a filing deadline done. So we felt that would be more beneficial.
Right. So it's kind of like in our best interest to use as much of that money as possible.
Yes, sir. And for the first quarter, we maxed out.
Yeah.
We did max out our hours that we were allocated for in that first quarter. And I mean, it was down to the last day. So I think that we've budgeted properly. It wasn't like we were 6 weeks in and already had expended it all. It was December 30th, we used our last hour, and the quarter ended on December 31st.
Excellent. So then that gets to my next point. Do you think it would be useful to see the general activities that you use that money for by category or whatever, an associated drawdown to kind of further buttress, I guess, our oversight and compliance for the state sponsor. Would that make sense? What do you
It
think
does.
about
It does. No, we could do that.
that? And then maybe, do the reporting so that the council and the public can see what the stuff you're working on for that.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. We could get with me. We can go over how you want it done, but we could also even include it in the annual report or, bi-monthly, whatever works best or you think would be, the council feels would be the best for the public to, in the ease of the public to see it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not trying to give you more work because I know you'll take whatever we throw at you and figure it out, but I don't want to overload you, but it might be something to think about. So I'll get with you and we'll chat a little bit about it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else? Just moving on.
Okay, proposed request number 11, I'll let the town manager speak on this, but this is basically for an adjustment of our current part-time events person to actually converting that into a full-time position. And I believe this proposal it would mean it would start March 1st through the end of the year, but I'll go ahead and let the town manager speak on that.
Yes, so I want to call your attention on item number 11. I want to first talk about the overtime change. So what Roberto and I noticed this past year is with the staffing that we have and the exempt and non-exempt status of some of our employees, we needed to pay some overtime hours when it came to events-related pay period cycles. So based on the workload right up to Haymarket Day, the summer concert, as we had the farmers market also happening those weekends, those pay periods, we had some of our employees who do not fall in the exempt category needing to be paid overtime. So this is an adjustment that we just need to do in an effort to take care of those instances. We do our very best we can to offset hours and work with everybody in-house to be very flexible. For the most part, this works well, except when it comes to those few weeks a year when we have a very big event and we need all hands on deck. So that's the first item I wanted to talk about is overtime. With that, we also were taking track of how many event hours are being done by other employees, and also what is our current event position able to accomplish in the hours that we've been given them. I passed out a updated job description that I wanted to discuss with council. I will try to keep this brief as it's a budget discussion, but what we're noticing is that currently the position is allowed up to 15 to 25 hours per week. And based on all of the items that we have, it's just not enough hours for this individual to, or any individual who's in that position, but for that person to be able to accomplish the entirety of the job. So I have highlighted new items that I've added to the job description, but I also want to call out a couple that were in here, but were spread across the entirety of staff as it stands today. So when Chief and I spoke about this position, I'd say 18 months ago, I ran it by him and he was okay with our event coordinator on our side helping to facilitate and take some of the load off of his department for their police events. This is not something that we've been able to accomplish yet just because we've had to set our priorities on town administration events. I would like to still be able to provide that service to the chief from the admin team so that we can continue to have the cross collaboration as we go through our community events together. I've modified the advertising and promoting. Originally, it was something that was coordinated with our administrative assistant deputy clerk, but she is doing all of the town advertising and social media work. I think that this is a big enough task that needs to be split across two individuals to better manage and one person not spend a majority of their day doing it. Currently, we are all of staff, as I hope we continue to do so. We all act as a community business representative, but I would like us to have a little bit more of a point person when it comes to going out, being in these businesses each week, and talking about sponsorships. I would like for us to start in an effort. We outlined in our communications discussions that we want more of a community event calendar. We want people to know what's going on in our community, not just what we're doing, but our businesses and other residents. So I would like for this position to maintain and update a community events calendar that works with our local area as well as our in-town businesses. Currently, myself and the administrative assistant are still facilitating the business roundtable meeting. I would really like for our event coordinator to take on the business roundtable and be somebody who is scheduling us speakers to come into these quarterly meetings and provide a little bit more structure to what we have going on. What we have currently is great, but I think there's always room for growth, and this is how this person could help us out. Again, I think that facilitating the grand openings and ribbon cuttings should fall on the event coordinator. As it stands today, the event coordinator and the administrative assistant are really trying to tag team it. And then having a little bit more time in I say the quiet months, but December, January, to work with myself and the town treasurer to manage a budget for the events. Right now, that's something that Roberto and I are still working on together. We're trying to involve the event coordinator as we can, but the hours of the day just go away quickly when the other priorities are there. And then lastly, I would like for the event coordinator position to help with the town museum, whether it be helping to facilitate a public-private partnership that we currently have, and if that continues, they would assist in that facilitation. But certainly at a minimum, they would be rotating our exhibits on a quarterly basis so that we can keep material changing for our public to come in and see. So I'm happy to take any questions. I think everybody knows exactly how hard the event planning can be and how many events we do. The person in the job is doing great. Best case scenario, it's a position and a person that we can maintain and move up into full-time, but I would have to certainly coordinate with where that person's at and what they need. But we would like to move forward with a full-time position.
Not shocking.
Vice Mayor?
There's one, like, I'm all on this. So I'd like to point out that we're also utilizing this position for farmers market.
Yes, and one thing real quick to add, one change I did make, I'm sorry I didn't mention this sooner. I did flag in the top right corner the work schedule. So I would like for this position to have a seasonal schedule, if you will. During farmers market season, I would like for this schedule to possibly even be, say, a Sunday, Monday, off, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we would want to work with the individual to see what fits, but I would really like to see a primary function during the farmers market season that this person is here. Currently, the person in the position did that. And when, she couldn't make it on the weekends, a lot of times Alexandra or Kim would come and be that town representative. I think it spoke volumes to our community to see somebody on the staff team be there for them. Yes.
Oh, I was thinking I wasn't done, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Fine. I just wanted to make certain that I highlighted that in a position like this, consistent communication availability for our community is really important. And though we have a lot of growth within our community as far as new businesses, it would be really important to highlight anniversaries and special occasions that happened within our businesses, and that's something that this person could take on. And then as far as our town history and taking partnership with that, having a program, Marchant knows so much about our history. I would love to see that, collaboration as far as moving forward. So, yeah.
You done?
That was it.
Okay. I see Joe's hand up.
Can somebody email me the,
Yes,
the
I'm
job
sorry, Joe. I'll drop an email right now. I'm sorry about that.
okay, yeah, I'd like an opportunity to review it because I don't have it in front of me. But one thing that comes to mind quickly is the qualitative and quantitative benefits of the position. I'm sure there's going to be some offsets here if I heard the conversation, but I think it would be important to see what those might be, whether it be staff time or other savings associated with going full-time.
Certainly,
So-
if council would like to see it, I can pull together some numbers that show event hours from other staff members and how that would compare. I can talk through a schedule of what we saw this past calendar year with our events that we have and how those weeks could be better adjusted. And then I also would like to even in that add what further potential we could have to the effect of adding another event here or there. We do 4 main core events, but I think this would open us an opportunity to have a couple smaller events, whether it be at our town park or special days here in town hall.
You good? You good, Joe?
So far,
Sending you the file now, Joe.
okay.
Tracy Lynn?
I have just one more observation. If we look at the numbers from finance, we can tell a big difference in between the previous year with sponsorship, when you're dedicated to sponsorship, which actually has an impact on the town's finances. So when we have additional sponsorships, that's a positive thing. So having somebody who is able to focus on that is really important.
I agree.
And so this budget line item includes the request that's put in here. Is that what I'm getting?
Yes, so to get back to the budget discussion there, so what Roberto has done here is he has moved some of the money from the remaining part-time wages so that can help offset, and then you'll see the changes. I'll let Roberto speak more to him. It is his budget, but he can walk you through how he's accommodated for that change.
So, yeah, that is, Council, that is correct. We use some of the funds there, but then obviously with the additional revenues and TOT and as well as the meals tax, use some of that monies to offset some of those additional costs when it comes to the benefits this position would have if they were to start on March 1st.
When do you envision, if approved, the position to go full-time?
March 1st.
Marshawn?
So sort of asking the obvious, the salary that's to be determined, that's all the additional information you'll be providing us. And then I assume it would have to go out, if it goes to full-time position, do we have the ability to move our current employee, or will we have to put that back out and hire or put out job position again?
I would want to do the same process that I did when we moved the part-time maintenance position up to a full-time. I would want to post it out there and encourage the person sitting in the position to please apply for it and go through the process that we did previously.
Sorry, I should have asked it that way. Are we going to follow the same process?
Yes, we would like to follow the same process. So ideally, we have planned it to start effective March 1. Certainly, it would start effective, no sooner than that, as soon as we go through the proper process and do the steps needed. I think Joe?
Joe?
Yeah, it sounds like a parallel approach here, right? You wanna get that out there so you can get some feedback on potential candidates and whether in fact your part-timer is going to put in for the job. That's one track. And then of course we need to have the information to make an informed decision. So it
Yes.
sounds like we got a little bit of work to do. But as far as I'm concerned, if you wanted to put it out, I mean, I have no objection to doing that.
Alexander?
So these increases and like salaries, wages increases and overtime, and then the decrease in part-time, is that to cover what we've been talking about, moving the person from part-time to full-time?
That's correct, except I would state that the overtime line item would be something that we would come and ask for anyway. That kind of stands separate as the maintenance position and the deputy clerk position were both individuals who, as we're working through the events, they take on some of these duties that we have to spread across the team. And we, needed to properly pay wages.
Okay. So if that's the case, it looks like during this budget, for this budget that we're talking about, it's going to cost us, again, about $9,705. Is that correct?
I will get back to you with that number. Go.
Yeah, it's based on the, I guess, salary range that is projected and everything
then
else, and we don't know that yet.
And then moving forward, about 20,000, sounds like.
So in essence, this, because I am working on the proposed budget, it will be about a 52,000 annual year budget. This is something, it's kind of low, but something on par to what it was back when we used to have this position. I remember we used to have a director of events.
It was eliminated July of 2018.
Yeah. So in part, this position has always existed up until
July of 2018.
2018 when it was eliminated. But yes, to answer your question, I'll get with you on that.
Thank you. So the overtime that you're asking for is just this budget-specific amendment. We don't anticipate the need for this kind of adjustment for the next budget because this is going to be full-time?
I would say yes and no, in the sense that next budget, we're going to come to you asking to have a small overtime budget line item, knowing what we know now, that we need these staff man hours for all of our events to be as successful as they are. So we won't be asking again for an amendment. We're going to come to you during budget season with that allocated for 25, FY 25.
Because you anticipate needing those extra hours from these specific individuals for our events in the future.
Can I give an example real quick?
Yeah.
So for example, Matt, you guys see how hard he works on putting up beer garden fences and all of that stuff. So he's trying to get all of that done in his 40-hour work week on top of the maintenance. And so sometimes that's where we're bleeding into 45 hours a week. And so if we can't flex it because we just have to get these things done for event prep, then that's where I have to do what I'm required to do and pay the overtime hours. So that's where this is coming from. We try not to dip into that. We try to flex. We try to do what we can to accommodate everybody's schedule. So sometimes it's work really hard on the weekend and then Matt says, I'm going to take a Monday. And, that's great. That's what we want to see, him take a day of rest. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way.
Okay, thank you.
For clarification on the event overtime, does that also include any additional police security? It doesn't. That all
This
comes
is
from-
this is all admin.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, I gotta say my snide comment, right? So this is because you were able to track it since we moved to itemizing our hourly timesheets, right?
Yes, Mayor.
Kind of like the framework that I always try to promote, right?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Just
Certainly.
want to throw that in there, just to show the benefits of if you go into that structure, we can start to, right? Look ahead. You got a question,
No,
Alex?
so if I understand correctly, based on Joe's request, it sounds like similar to what we did for Matt. We're going to do come up with some sort of a comparison, right, in terms of what we're looking at, right, for this position, for this new position. Okay.
Okay. Predictive. That's the environment I like to see. Okay, moving on.
All right, moving on, proposal amendment number 12. That is basically to address now that we have a full-time staff, we have a a deputy clerk who is going to go in for her certification as well. And because the ability of having more bodies in the office, some our town manager and town planner are able to attend these conferences. Prior years, there's always tended to be low as we didn't really have the ability to attend these events. So now that we have these employees that do want to attend these events, and we encourage them to do so, we definitely wanted to up some of these line items that would help with that. Continue education. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the changes, it is low. I can see this is good for the rest of this year, but I sure hope you reassess this for next year's budget, because I would like to see a little bit more participation at the VML conferences by staff. So I do feel that we would more than triple this line item from what it is now with lodging and everything else, if we do participate in those events.
Okay.
Yes. Agreeing with you there, this is just for here till the end of the year. Obviously, as I'm working on the budget, that's going to change.
Yeah, just a comment.
Yep.
Okay.
Item number 13. We've been discussing this for a while, but this is to address the legal services. Obviously, with the amount of projects that are going on, we've had to get legal involved just to verify, make sure everything's being done correctly. Some of these are pass-throughs, some of things aren't. This is also to adjust for the current litigation with the Bean property that was, has been being dealt with and hopefully closed this fiscal year. So this is just more of in preparation if we need to. Not to say we have been trying to work with the new attorneys to be better on managing how the time is being spent. I believe our last 2 months have been actually reflecting that. As finance has seen that we have between the town manager and staff, we've been able to reduce those costs as needed. Any questions on that one? Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I heard you mention the beans, Roberto, and I'm not sure how much we can talk about that at this point. Is that something, Emily, that we need to have a closed discussion on eventually?
Let me check with the attorney. I can certainly give you guys an update. Let me just verify that I can speak to it openly with everyone. And since we're pretty much finalized on our court case and we have a path forward, I think I should be able to do that. So let me just verify that this week, and then it can be something we discuss as early as next Monday at our meeting.
Oh, okay, great. I'll wait till then.
Okay. Line item number 14. As you all know, we have been having a delay with our audit. We're trying to do everything possible to get these done. Currently, we have completed the 2022. Right now, we're currently working on FY 2023. My hope was that we were able to allocate those expenditures to the proper fiscal year. Unfortunately, in discussing it with the auditor, they do have to be reflected in this fiscal year. But if we were to go back, it seems like a big number. If we were to go back last year, we did not spend any of these funds on the line item. So essentially, they went to the reserves. Essentially, we're just bringing it back, carrying it over to pay for the expenditure as is being executed this current year. Line item number 15. The town has a MOU in place when it comes to the TOT tax. This is just to address that MOU. As the revenues are going up, so will the way the MOU is to be dispersed on the expenditure side. So this is just addressing that specific revenue source. Number 16. Number 6. Yes, sir.
Yes, Joe?
Yeah, I'd like to, I'd like to entertain a thought here on this increase to the tourism line item and talk about possibly using some of that money or part or all to beef up the snow removal line item when we get into that discussion. So perhaps we make an adjustment to that there, that 14,236.
We can divert TOT to snow removal?
So
Okay.
Part of
We can go, never mind, we can go down that spiral later.
Some of it isn't, some is in the general fund. I would think that part of this is part of the general fund too.
yes, so the way the MOU is written up, Councilman Schneider, is that the 3/7 goes back to the tourism entity that the town has agreed to the MOU with, and then the other 3/7 goes to tourism of the town that we can use for tourism, and there's a other 2%, 2/7 that goes into the general fund. So we can discuss that as we get down to the CIP.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. Any more questions on that one? Okay. Line item number 16, that is basically to, per our CIP, we did have, in a 5-year CIP, we did have a $50,000 mark when it came to the park project. That is just to move monies over to begin work on the RFP for the demo of the park. And the 50 is just a marker. We're not sure how much of it we will use this fiscal year, but just wanted to, since it was part of the CIP, we went ahead and make that move now. So we have the ability to continue working on that work. Yes,
What is the status with the demolition,
RFP.
the appeal piece? What happened with that? Did we submit an appeal? And has it been reviewed? For the, yeah, has it?
That was a decision.
Oh, we made the decision. I'm sorry. I got confused. I thought it was going to be like a volleyball thing. I apologize. Thank you.
I do have a question. So, and we'll have this later in our priority discussion, but if we wanted to do, there's a cost savings, I think, in doing the demo and doing the pavilion at the same time, and we have the dollars to do that. If we wanted to move the proffer dollars to do some design or construction of the pavilion, will we have to move those monies also later on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so that, yeah, we could have that discussion, council.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. Line item number 17. This is just to address the additional revenues we're getting on the town events, just kind of bringing it back into the expenditure side of the events. Question on that. Line item 18. This is for the, I believe we've spoken about this, but this is basically the match amount that we need to do for the stormwater grant that the county is going to execute. So we wanted to put those funds there in preparation of when we will be making that payment to the county. Then,
A quick question to the town manager. Do you feel they're going to make this year's budget?
I certainly hope so. When I spoke with them at the beginning of the month, they were teeing up everything they needed to talk to the board, and then we're going to follow up with when to send over the monies for it. So I'll follow up with them again, maybe with the new board taking seat. Things maybe got delayed a little bit, but I'll follow back up with Megan.
Yep. Use our friend with the county to influence this.
okay, line number 19. So this is a minor adjustment. We had an amortization Excel format that was incorrectly calculating the final payment on this, one of the two debt obligations. So this is just to correct that, as we want to make sure that everything aligns. And then line item 20. So after all these requested amendments, some you can see were offset by revenues, and some were actually expenditures were being addressed using some of the increased in revenues. But even with that, the leftover amounts after all those changes and proposed and requested amendments, we were still left with 133,265 that we went ahead and placed it into the CIP fund expenditures. This, Councilman Pasanello, in portion could be some of the 2% that we can use, the 2/7 from the increase in the TOT, but it's also just funds that we can use if the council would like to use some of these funds on some of the other expenditures, as obviously the snow conversation is going to come up. Here's where we could actually move some of these funds from.
Looks good. Any questions to finish this off?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay.
So if we go back to line, item number 17, those dollar amount, the increases, what process do you go through to determine what is an appropriate increase? I mean, what drives that?
On what? On the expenditure side?
On the increasing the expenditure amount based on an increase in revenue, right? What thought goes,
Because we see, I'm looking at what the expenditures is, what the funds are being used for. For example, sponsorships gives us the ability to do more contracts, do more contract work, to be able to contract some of the fencing, some of the porta potties, kind of to offset some of those costs. The new beer garden tables that we now do. Prior years, the beer garden, 2 silos at the time, they incurred all those expenses. The town did not pay for any of that. But since they are no longer participating in sponsoring the event, now it's something that we use sponsorship funds to offset those costs. Farmers Market, it was the first year that we have actually taken back the collection. Prior year, we let the Farmers Market manager handle that portion. I can tell you from talking to the Finance Committee, now that we have taken it back, we've actually been able to collect the true revenues versus the cost. So we're able to now kind of align this addresses for the time, that it takes to promote the event, and for the cost that it takes for Matt to prepare for the events from April through November. So it's basically built on trends. Some of these were newer. We've only had a year or less than a year of data to compare it to. And others with time, kind of like the TOT, we were unsure where they look at, how they will look after their first year. Now they're trying, it seems the trend is very similar to the prior years, actually a little bit better. But we'll see how that changes as well too.
Okay. So follow-up question. Let's assume that instead of revenue, we are running into a deficit, or our revenue is less than expected, right? Do we go through the process of reducing our expenditures, or
Yes.
no? We do.
Yes.
Okay.
100%. What Emily and I do, especially during COVID, she was not the town manager then, but with the acting town manager then, what we did is we reviewed them daily. I could tell you, kind of similar to the cigarette tax, where I'm always looking at numbers. And I think if something's off, I start reviewing past years, seeing what's going on. So we always will adjust. There's been years where we've cut down costs on conventions. We've cut costs on PD, we're not doing as much overtime. The supplies, events, we cut down events. So if there's potentially a deficit, it is our duty to make sure, well, especially mine, but I would come up to the town manager. She would probably not approve many things, and we would have a discussion with finance, bring it up to council, make council aware of it, and we would adjust for those.
Okay. So it goes both ways. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Everybody good?
I have a couple comments about the overall when Roberto's done.
You done, Roberto?
Yes, I was done with that.
Joe, you got the floor.
Oh, okay. So we're going to publicly hear this next Monday, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and along with the other issue, okay. And that's been posted, we're all set to go. One of the things I was thinking about, Roberto, during this week, if you could show the total budget, the delta between what we're currently operating under and what the budget will be going to based on this amendment, can that be included in here? So in other words, the absolute number in this amendment is $1,093,734. So if you add that into the current budget of $3,264,420, we're going to have a budget of around $4.35 million, roughly. I think that's an important piece to share with the public.
Okay.
And that ends up being about a 33.5% increase over our existing budget. So, I mean, just information, I guess, but it's also important people understand it. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Next agenda item, Board of Zoning Appeals nomination.
In your packet, I provided a little bit of information on the Board of Zoning Appeals vacant reappointment. Board of Zoning Appeals is a little bit different as opposed to your ARB and Planning Commission, where their term expires in January as opposed to June. And it's a 5-year term. Mr. Dan McGill has been serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals since 2018, so 2019, so his term expires in January of 31st. So he has expressed an interest again to serve for another 5-year term. So when next Monday you can make the nomination to reappoint him, and then we'll go forth from there.
Okay, any questions on that?
Just the only point is he continues to serve regardless until such time as either he resigns or he's reappointed. So there's no vacuum. He can continue to serve if anything does pop up until he's reappointed by the circuit court.
Right.
Okay, and that was a confirmation I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no discussion, we'll take action on that next Monday. Okay. Next line item, strategic planning work session.
Does council want to talk real quick about the snow policy first?
Amendment to the agenda, or is everybody okay with that?
No objections.
No objections?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move that.
So, a little background. This has come up every winter. I know last winter was a little different. I went out on maternity leave and balls were dropped. It could have been something that I should have picked back up when I got back in, but we had some other pressing matters, so I think it was set on the back burner. So fast forwarding, we had 2 snow events. I am certain that some of your neighbors probably reached out to you, sharing some frustrations. We had citizens reach out and share frustrations. I worked with Matt, our maintenance guy, to get to the bottom of what happened, because normally our contractor takes care of our sidewalks and our town-owned parking lots. Sidewalks being all of those on the Washington Street corridor. When I signed our contract back in the fall, that is how it reads, that's how it was stated, so we had an agreement there. Apparently, they were operating on how we used to do things several years ago, that we would call to initiate the clearing of the sidewalks, and we would call to give that authorization. That was not stated in the contract. That's not something we have done in the last 2 years. So this was a miscommunication between us and them. We have since resolved it. Every snow we get for the remainder of the season will be taken care of on the sidewalks when it hits that accumulation of 2 inches, like it states in there. If we're supposed to get anything that is less, I will be calling them directly. We'll be making a decision together to pre-treat or take care of it accordingly. And this is something that was budgeted. We talked about it last budget season of putting in monies for snow removal specifically. I would, however, like to make a proposal for a snow policy moving forward. This is probably going on the 3rd or 4th season that we've heard from our residents and our community that they want to see the sidewalks on Washington Street being taken care of. We maintain our streetscape in the sense that we take care of our lights, we take care of our benches, our flower baskets, our planters, our banners, the flags, you name it. If it's in the streetscape, we take care of it. So I find that as your town manager, I recommend we work it into our budget and we take care of the snow removal on Washington Street, as well as the small jog of the shared use path on Jefferson Street that gets you to the county. The reason I'm stating this is, one, is our streetscape that we maintain, and we pride ourselves on being a walkable community, and I think we need to be walkable all seasons of the year. This has continued to be a frustration that our citizens raise with us, and if we have a lot of taxpayer money that we can put into other areas, I think we can look at the numbers. Roberto and I can talk about what it would be for a very snowy season with X number of snow events and what that would look like cost-wise. We just got the bill for the work they did last week. If they were proactive and didn't have to chip away at ice, I think it would have been a little bit cheaper. So again, he and I can work on that during this upcoming budget season to present something to you, but I would highly recommend that we make a policy going forward that this is something the town does. If we rely on the property owners, we can do that. However, I would need the council's support and some allocation of funds in an effort to work with our town attorney to sort through the streetscape project files from years past to determine which pieces of the sidewalk property did we buy and we own and we need to maintain versus which have easements on them and should be maintained by the existing property owner. So again, I think this goes back to if we take care of it and it's one uniform thing that's done and we maintain it, that helps us out. So I would love to hear feedback. I can certainly share some of those emails we've received, but it has been a bit of a growing pain for the last couple years, every winter season.
So just, if you could, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Jump right in.
Give you the floor.
So, trying to understand the distinction. Right now, our contractor is on, by contract, to do the snow removal. When you're saying the town takes it over, are we hiring a different service or?
No, my recommendation would still to be with our contracted service. And if that contractor changes, let's say next year we're looking at a new contract for landscaping services, we would certainly ask when we're getting RFP bids, we would ask them to also tell us about their snow removal services. So I would leave it with the same contractor. They do good work. They're reliable. Okay. Except for a little hiccup, but that's a miscommunication step. They're a reliable person. They're local to our community. They've always been very good to us. I think they do good work when it comes to snow removal. We're not seeing really big icy patches. They're taking care of the products we have out there. We're also going to need to talk to them or whomever is contracted to do it to say, we have stamped concrete and the first year it's in, you need a certain kind of care and maintenance for it. Once it's fully cured and you get past that first year, they can be treated differently when it comes to snow pre-treatments. So I think that that's also something we need to be mindful of.
In terms of easements versus rights of way, I think the universal, we have access across the length of it. So other than.
Correct. And that was more in the sense of when this has come up before, we have some businesses who we say, your business is located here or you're a property owner, you need to take care of it. And there's an argument back of, well, the town has an easement on it, you need to do it. Or the town bought this, you need to do it. So that was more a sense of whose responsibility would it actually be to maintain it and do that. And then enforcement is a whole nother layer.
I would agree, we don't need to go down that path, although probably at some point we do need to do an audit of who owns what and where, but I would agree, I think us doing it universally creates consistency and timing. Doesn't preclude a business owner from getting out there and doing it themselves,
Certainly.
but I would agree that we would want to have a single source doing that work, so, thanks.
Vice Mayor.
So I'm going to piggyback off of Marchant in regards to it makes sense to have a universal program. Everybody's the understanding. I also think that it would be a one-off or a gradual process to figure out all of the responsibilities, right? So then if we're utilizing our attorney, that's going to increase our bill, of which if we can minimize that, that would be great. So obviously a universal plan. And our streetscape's important to tourism.
Yes.
Matt?
I think just echoing a lot of what's been said too is that, there's also the public perception. I think that trying to, we probably all heard from neighbors, you got emails, I'm sure. I think trying to explain, that, well, that's not our responsibility, that's the business or that's the resident when it's on Washington Street, I think, that could be problematic. So, likely supportive. I would definitely want to see what the cost would be in case we did have a super bad winter. Obviously, we want to control that to the greatest degree possible. But I think anything we can do to there are a lot of people out walking around in town, see them all the time, and yeah, there are definitely some challenges from the last storm. So if we can move forward and try to rectify that in the future by taking on the responsibility, absolutely, I think we should do it.
One last note, sorry.
Okay.
So in that line item, we would keep that consistent. So if Mother Nature decided to be less one year, it would continue to the next year to prepare us for a year that she might not be so much.
Yes.
Okay.
Alexander?
Yes, does our contract or service include pre-treatment?
We can work with them to have that as an option. And that's also something that we can work with supplying our maintenance employee with the right equipment. Right now, we have a spreader that hits the 180, so it's spreading a lot into the grass and the road, but we could work on pricing out one that spreads straight down and then see what salt and everything would cost to how many bags you would need to do.
That's exactly what I was going to mention. I mean, we're going to have to do a cost comparison, right?
Right.
But that's possibly an option.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, are you raising your hand there, Joe, or are you just balancing your pen?
Raising my pen, but I'll let you go first if you want. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm assuming what you're going to do is come up with a policy that kind of identifies what we're claiming the town wants to accept responsibility for which sidewalks.
Yes.
Even though, we will be getting complaints from, I'm sure, some of the residents who sit there and say, well, you got this ordinance saying that I'm responsible for clearing that concrete sidewalk in front of my house, which would be for, Green Hill Crossing as well as my area. And I think homeowners associations usually have it built in that they have a cleanup program. Identify that, identify the trigger points, identify what the cost histories are within it so that we have some type of program package, right, that kind of identifies what's going on here. That's what I'm
Yes.
kind of looking for.
And I'll include a map with it, so there's no question in the policy. It would be something that everybody could refer back to in a simple manner of here's our map, here's what the town's going to be taken care of according to this policy.
So I'm done. Joe, you want the floor?
Yes. I think it's a worthy policy to look into, without a doubt. Part of the problem that I see is the uniformity of the work being done. You have some neighbors will do it, and some neighbors won't. And I think we can make a strong argument that being part of the streetscape, that the town taking this responsibility on makes a lot of sense from a maintenance and everything else that Emily talked about previously. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely, we got to see the cost, and knowing Roberto and Emily, they'll probably give us a somewhat worst case scenario, so don't be scared. But that's important to understand what it could be. Rolling those funds over makes a lot of sense as well. In the interim, I think it'd be worthy, though, to also move some money over into the either the snow removal line item or use some of the tourism money for that, because I think when you're talking about walkability and all that good stuff, I mean, I think you can make an argument for attracting folks into town by making it walkable. So maybe we can have a discussion about that. The public perception is a really important point. And also, when we talk about public perception, we're not just talking about residents, we're talking about businesses. And letting businesses know that we're using some of the revenue that we take in on meals tax and other resources, that we're using it to the benefit of them and their businesses that have, street fronts in Washington. So I think it makes a lot of sense to look into. And my only question is, we do have a code on this, I believe, Emily, and I would think we might have to do some kind of a carve out and do an amendment to the code about the responsibility for adjacent landowners.
Yes, that's correct. It would have to be an ordinance change as well.
Okay. I'm interested in seeing what the numbers look like.
Any more questions? So I guess a direction now is okay to move forward with, trying to put together a policy.
I will flag this for our February work session, since we're taken care of for this season and we're good to go there. I'll flag it for the February work session to bring back numbers to council, as well as a draft policy, and then what other items would need to be changed, such as our ordinance code section.
Okay. And speaking to public perception, what are the thoughts of council of beefing up either the line item for snow removal or using some of the tourist dollars? Because 7,000 is probably not going to be enough if we have a major event. That's all we have in the budget right now.
Does council have any thoughts you guys want to answer, Joe, yet? Or
You talked about
us?
earlier that we have the other line item or the budget amendment that we could pull from.
Yeah, we were discussing at a staff level that if we pull it from CIP, that money is already coming from the collection of the meals tax revenue, as well as, what was the other one? And the TOT. So we would just want to pull from that CIP number.
Yep.
But certainly we can entertain other discussion.
So I'm trying to understand the need to beef up our, whatever line item we're thinking about. So this current contract that we have or service, is there like a upper limit in terms of how many events and so forth?
No, so what our contract currently states is for, I believe it's $62 an hour per man, they come out and do it. And so what they do is they will allocate the crew needed to get it done in a timely fashion. So whether it takes one man 5 hours to do the north side of the street and another 5 to do the south, they get it done. So typically what they do is they'll send out a crew of 5 to 7 people. They get it done in about a 2-hour time frame, and then we're billed for a total of, if it's 5 people, 2 hours, we're billed a total of 10 hours at that rate. Our recent event where they were out here with a bigger crew and they were out here for, I believe it was 3 hours, we were looking at, Roberto's going to pull up that, we just got it in last week. So they plowed our parking lots, our museum, and they did our sidewalks.
2,314.
Okay, so now it makes sense. I was thinking the contract is similar to like a mowing, where it's basically it's a fixed price, right? But this is, okay.
Per event.
Per event, okay. I did not know that. Now it makes sense, okay.
Yep, and I'm willing to beef it up. I'd say 15,000 up front would be fine. Where you find it from, we can have that discussion if you want to take it from, the top tax revenue or from the CIP. Until we have a history to really do some trending and figuring it out, I think we're in a good enough condition where we can overestimate.
And certainly, if you think about it, the past 2 years, we didn't have a lot of snow events. And so this past year, back a year ago now, when we were budgeting for this current budget that we're in, we were trying to take that into consideration and understand what it would be. So that's why we came up with the 7,000, as we did look back at some of our other snowier years when they were projecting we were going to have more occurrences. And Roberto and I pulled the old contract numbers. We talked with our contractor then. They told us the rates were going to stay the same. So that's how we came up with the 7,000. It was not just stick a number out there and see what hits.
Yeah, and if there's no real discussion on what pot of money to pull this from, I leave it up to the best judgment of our finance liaisons in the next meeting, so that when they do present in the February work session, we'll have some type of agreement on what pot that's being pulled out of. Is that okay with you guys?
Staff recommendation as well.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Or comments? Okay, we'll move on then, the strategic work session. You want that before the mobile food ordinance discussion?
Mobile food's more of an update. We can do that update. You guys can take a 5-minute recess if you need to use the restroom, fill up your drink, and then we're gonna do an activity to be engaged, because it's gonna be after 9 o'clock.
I'd say do the update and then.
Okay.
Yeah, do the update, and then we'll take a break.
So the mobile food unit, the update is that it's currently being reviewed by the attorneys. We should get it back by the end of this week. We did present it to the Business Roundtable, and in fact, actually, it was a lot more positive from what we gathered for one of our long-standing brick and mortars. He actually would like to see it done more often here in the town center. So that's up for discussion with everyone. But I pledge that for all of them to come in here and discuss it. But the overall update is that for the brick and mortars that were there, they were very positive on it. They like that they're going to be restricted to just the breweries. They're okay with that. We answer questions about how it would handle the process and the fees. No one seemed to have an issue with it. We encourage them to come into the public meeting, and if they are not able to make it, participate in the survey that went out, as well as submit their emails to the clerk with any comments on it. But the only update I have for council is that it seems to be taken very positive with the community out there. So we look forward to having that discussion next week.
Okay, anybody have any comments on it for this meeting?
Yes. In
Okay.
terms of, being limited to breweries, wineries, distilleries, right? Again, I understand where the rest of the public stands, right? I think we are considering whether or not this is a good idea based on what currently exists in terms of the number of breweries or winery, right? But Emily, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think breweries have a by right are permitted in B1, B2, and I1, right?
You're correct.
So at any given point, basically in the future, one of the current businesses, or one of the lots could be occupied by a brewery, winery / distillery, right? It can be on Washington Street, wherever. So what we're saying with this is basically that we are okay with having up to 2 food trucks, right, per business, operating between hours of 10 a.m., 10 p.m. Right? Again, I think we are considering this based on what currently exists, not potentially what can come in the future, right? I just want to throw that out into, so that others can consider that as well.
Okay. Mary?
I just wanted to highlight that in the ordinance, it says no parking space that satisfies a zoning ordinance parking requirement shall be converted into a parking space or vending area to accommodate the mobile food establishment. And I think with your concern about the properties, especially on our main street, Washington, that's going to be these smaller lots here, and at least the ones that are available. And so due to their smaller lots, the number of required parking is going to take up quite a bit. I think we actually talked about that when we rezoned everything and put limitations on heights and all sorts of things and amount of green space they have to have. So when they're here with their smaller lots and limited parking, noting this is really important. So there would absolutely not be space for two like food trucks to fit on these small lots here. There's just like Murray, there's no way they could not accommodate two food trucks in a day for any amount of time. Like it just wouldn't, it would take up all of their parking. The Aroma 2, yes, the wine tasting. There's no way that food trucks could fit there and ensure that they have proper parking. Because
If we adapt this, it will not be able to have even one food truck, right? Aroma 2?
Pretty much, yeah.
Sure.
They won't even have.
Right, but they, as a winery, wouldn't necessarily be excluded because they're a winery, they're excluded due to parking. So I think that this is, while it doesn't explicitly limit accessibility or like our want or welcoming, it does limit it in a different way, if that makes sense. It's not like explicit only Tuesday through Thursday. It's instead saying you need to have enough parking so that people aren't parking on the street or parking in grass. You cannot put your food truck on the grass. We are not going to be that type of town. You know, this needs to be formal and proper and done in a tasteful manner.
What we're saying, taking into consideration is that we're basically saying that at no point will we have any business, current business or new business with enough parking spots on Washington Street to accommodate at least one food truck. Is what we're saying?
So what I'm saying is the lots that you're concerned about that I know that are available, especially in this particular side of town, like towards the residential areas, I can't think of a lot that is large enough that would be able to accommodate the required parking plus two food trucks. That's what I'm saying right now. In the future, maybe somebody in another part of town with different lot sizes or whatever, maybe they could accommodate it. But what I know of available lot sizes in B1, B2, particularly on this end, they don't have the lot size to accommodate food trucks.
Are you referring to vacant lots that can be potentially developed?
I'm thinking of like this corridor here that's available, that's what I'm thinking of.
So there's one lot, right?
Right. Well, I'm also thinking of like the old garage between El Vaquero and Hidden Jewels. I'm thinking of the blue house across the street from my neighborhood, like kind of towards Green Hill Crossing and next to Aroma 2. Even that one house on the corner lot there at Green Hill Crossing with the chain link fence. I don't think that they're going to have enough for two, maybe one, depending on how they develop their property, right? Because they're zoned for business now, commercial. And then we have our town park, we have residences, we have QBE, which is a large lot size, which we already have a brewery at, and they have their parking limitations as is as well. So, I mean, I definitely hear your concern about like not wanting this to be just like Washington DC with food trucks lining our street. I hear you. But I think that there are also limitations that set realistic expectations to ensure that people can still make it in and not be overburdening.
So the assumption then is the probability or the opportunity for this problem to occur is very minimal, limited.
No, I understand that, but we also should take into consideration not just the vacant lots, but also the existing lots, right?
Mhm.
Because again, at any point, one business goes and another comes, right?
Yeah.
But the question, Mr. Mayor, so is this going to require a vote once it's through a public hearing?
Yes, certainly. So just two quick things to add. So one, all of them will have to go through a zoning application process. So that's where myself and Thomas will be checking the parking and making sure that they have adequate parking to do what they're required in the ordinance. This is the draft, so this is what's going to come up for a public hearing on Monday night, and then we'll have another discussion Monday night. We'll hear feedback. If you guys want to make additional changes, we can do so, and then following that, we can take it to a vote. The last thing I wanted to add real quick is that remember, we learn a lot of lessons once we implement something and we see how it works out. This summer can be our trial period. We pass this, we see how this summer goes, and we circle a date on the calendar in the fall to get a pulse check on it and have staff tell you, here's what we've learned that's not working, here's what community complaints or positive, notes we've received. So I'm happy to work with you guys to do that, and give you guys that pulse check 6 months in, check again at a year, and then ordinances, we can, change them and modify them and readopt. So once it's in, it's not set in stone. Well, it is set in stone, but we can always come back and reevaluate is what I'm trying to get at.
Could I ask that one thing we track is, because I know the enforcement piece is going to lie heavily on the police department, I want to make sure that we're tracking in some way how much of that resource we're utilizing for this specific need.
Yes, I can work with Chief on that. We originally kind of spoke, and I think we're going to treat it as a general business check as they're driving around, but we will talk and see if there's a way to differentiate between that.
Okay, yeah, I would ask that you please try and differentiate it in some way, not to discourage it from them being treated as businesses, but maybe just so we know how much of that police department resource we're utilizing to enforce or support this ordinance.
Joe?
Yes, thank you. Emily, listening to you talk about the zoning, kind of sounds like you're thinking of a pre-screening or something, right?
Yes, so they have to fill out a zoning permit application just like anybody else would, and that's where we determine that the site, for example, at Great Maine, has enough parking spaces to facilitate up to two food trucks. They get that approval written off, and then it's as simple as the business coming in and applying for the mobile food truck license. So there is a pre-screening, yes, if you want to call it that.
Right, and they still have to go through the process of the business license for the mobile food trucks, and we'll be providing them, I would imagine, with the ordinance once it's adopted as part of the process,
Yes.
so that it's been communicated to them and they understand exactly what the restrictions are and the limitations.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And it sounds to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but the PD, or HPD, they're basically your eyes and ears on this. They're not going to be the ones, though, that enforces it. Isn't it going to be the zoning administrator that ends up enforcing it, or no?
So the way it's written in there is that I can assign a designee to enforce it. And so I can assign one of the PD or the PD to be able to kick this individual off site should they not have the permit. What I would like to do is make it very simple for them. They have like a neon green permit that sits in their windshield. They do a 5-second drive-by. If they see it, keep going. That was great. If they don't see it, get out, engage, figure out where it is. Hopefully that's a 10-minute conversation that results in they see the permit. Then if it's not, we can discuss, further actions. Hopefully it can be something, it's a friendly warning the first time, and you don't get to the enforcement and kicking people out until it's the second infraction.
Right. So inevitably, you could get to a VINCO, right?
Yes,
violation correction order.
yes,
So it sounds like to me that you'll be deputizing the chief.
exactly.
Okay, that's all.
Alexander?
So Emily, you said that after the public hearing, we'll have an opportunity to suggest updates?
Yes, so this will be one of our agenda items next week. So public hearing will come first in the agenda, and then when we get into agenda items, that'll be council's time to talk about it again and discuss.
So you're not looking for us to provide suggested updates now, prior to?
Certainly, if you have them and you guys want to provide any feedback, and if you want to provide feedback this week, that's something that we can work out and discuss.
Okay.
But if it's something that you guys want to make a change to what's drafted in front of you and you want council to agree to it, I would recommend we do that Monday night or when we can all agree by vote.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, you good? Everyone good? Okay, let's take a break for 5 minutes.
Okay?
Okay,
So we're on?
yep.
Okay, we're back.
Did you want Joe to be able to see that?
Yeah, Roberta, can you swivel our fancy camera?
That's if he'll be able to.
Read this or you want me to slide it for it? I want everybody to read it. It'll be hard. Well, it's looking the first shot.
I was gonna say, I guess.
Is it better?
What's on the sheet of paper?
Oh, no, you're not supposed to, it's just my notes.
Oh, okay.
All you gotta focus on is the
There we
big
go.
words.
Okay. Big words?
I'm gonna work with Joe.
Yeah, I don't know if the camera will pick that up.
I'll send in a picture of the paper.
Well, I guess he can keep looking at our beautiful faces.
Yeah.
One second, let me send this to Joe. Joe, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm dropping you a picture. It is what is on the whiteboard. The camera, I don't think, is going to pick it up. Okay, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to council about our strategic planning for the next, I'm going to say short term. I don't want to assign years just yet because I don't think that we're at that spot that we are going to do that. So I sent everybody a document. I hope you had a little bit of time to read through it. The strategic planning document that was put out by a professor at Virginia Tech. It's not an ad, I promise.
Go Hokies.
If you haven't had a chance yet, look through it. There's a lot of beneficial material in there. And so some of the things I wanted us to cover tonight is we identify our priorities. So you guys all go around and tell us what you would like for your priorities to be. And currently I'm thinking short term, meaning the rest of your term now and into a 3-year period of what can we do now before December of 24 to set up the next term to be successful in carrying out those priorities. The second thing I want to talk about very briefly is how we're going to determine the capacity load that we have for those priorities and how that's going to help us set what 1, 2, and 3 will be. So we're going to keep in mind the financial, the administrative, and the leadership capacity. I want us to prioritize your projects, talk very briefly about a timeline, and then set together action steps for what's coming up. What I want you to be aware of in our discussion is what is currently going on with the staff so that you can understand our administrative capacity. So just really quickly off the cuff, these are our top biggest workload items. This is not the day-to-day every little thing. So we have the RFP for the Park House demo. It's currently in works. The trash RFP is out there and we are currently accepting bids. Auditing RFP is going to be due here very soon, and Roberto and I will be reviewing those. We have the town park construction. We have, for the police side, the accreditation is a very big work item. and securing the purchasing of vehicles. If you want to know more about that workload, you can certainly ask Chief, but he is having quite a time finding us vehicles to even purchase for upcoming years. Civic Plus is our agenda minutes migration that Kim and I have been working on. And then we have our crosswalk projects and a pedestrian safety campaign that Chief and I would like to do in response to what we're hearing from the council about pedestrians. And then we have our ongoing seasonal events. So with that, I'm going to jump over and tell you what our staff together has talked about and what we would like to propose as some top priorities for you to consider. We have our town park construction. We want this to remain a priority in the sense that we're right in the middle of the project. We want to see the construction through. We want to have, if you will, a ribbon cutting for it. We want to do it right, get it done, and have it completed all before December of 2024. And this has been budgeted for, so we're halfway there. Item number 2, we would like to keep the town park in mind. Specifically, the demolition of the house structure and the construction of bathrooms and the planning phase. I want to circle back to that in just a minute and elaborate what we mean by that. Item number 3 is the town center campus. So I'm calling it the campus, meaning the entirety of the property. So that would be the exterior site plan that we have approved. And then that would also be the interior work that was tabled, I believe in 2017, we tabled that. So pulling that back off of the shelf, looking at what that would require to finish out the design work, the finalizing of the site plan for the interior work, and then identifying funding. Again, this is something that the whole project won't be completed by December of 2024, but it's something we can work through the phases with a timeline to complete it. And then the 4th item that I want to toss out there that has been discussed for many years on and off, and it might not be the popular opinion, but it is public parking. So we have heard a lot from our businesses and even some of our residents that we don't have enough public parking, or we don't have a general parking lot that somebody can go park in, walk to one of our businesses, walk to multiple of our businesses, and just kind of spend the day or half a day here. So we want to look at, is there an option to acquire land behind Town Hall in some of the empty lots there on Jefferson Street to maybe ultimately have a public parking lot that ties into our Town Hall campus, but could be utilized for the farmers market or events. So it would be not just for our events, but also for the greater community and business community to use and rely on. So I want to jump back to the park for just a second. In talking with staff, one of the things that we identified is we can tear down the park building and we could put bathrooms up. However, we are then going to start piecemealing everything. We don't want piecemealed. We want a theme. We want a design. We want it to feel like it was all planned out together. So in my training and background as a town planner, we learn about the importance of community engagement. I know we did the survey and I know we heard an initial, what do you want to see? I think it is time, and what I would like to ask for from council, even as early as tonight, to start discussions on is hiring a consultant to come do a community engagement charrette with us. So this would be an event that we hold at the park. There is a lot of research and information out there that shows you're going to get better involvement if you meet the people where they're at. So that would be us taking the consultant, meeting at the park when we have people who are there. So we're taking away a barrier of they can't come to town hall because they don't have childcare, or they can't make it to town hall because they have a job and it doesn't work around the hours that they work. So we're removing some of these barriers in an effort to get better information and collaboration with the community. So I would like for us to highly consider a consultant who would act as a mediator and a third party. They would not have any bias to what we're asking for. We can explain to them what we envision. We envision a pavilion to go in there. That's something we've already decided on. But where we need help is, do we want an amphitheater or do we want a dog park? Do we want a splash pad or do we want additional playground equipment? Do we want a full trail system or does our community want to see low impact like fitness equipment that they put in? So we can put together a scenario, we can put together vision boards. This is what our consultant would help us do in a neutral format. They would meet us up there at the park. We would host this event. It could be once, twice. We can figure out how many times. I would also encourage that we partner with a business such as one of our ice cream vendors to truly make it a community engagement event where you have a food truck there. The children can be playing, so mom or dad doesn't have to worry about childcare. They're already up there. Their children are already busy and involved. We have our vision boards, we're with our consultant, and it can be as simple as the consultants sometimes will hand out stickers, and you go and you place your sticker at the activity or the decision that you've made, what you want to see. So it could be the amphitheater or the dog park, and you are voting by a sticker. So I think this is something that would be very beneficial to us to involve the community at this next step for the park planning. This can remain as our priority number 2 or whatever priority you set it as. We can still work on getting the demolition of the house structure, but this sets us up for knowing the long-term vision, and then that helps us take back to a designer or an architect. We need to design our bathroom out and we need to have it in the right place along with these other features. So I think this is kind of chipping away at the bigger iceberg of what we're working on and what we ultimately want to be at, and I hope a 5-year span or less. But this gets us started now, and it shows our community that we hear them and we're moving on the project. We're not delaying. I would hope if this is something that council is in support of and thinks would be beneficial and productive for you guys as a body to make a decision, I would hope this is something we could do as early as April or May, and get a consultant on board to do that. Marchant?
So just to understand what you're saying, so the idea would be bring the house down and then plan the pavilion and the...
Kind of a parallel approach. So we are working on the RFP right now for the demolition. We're going to finalize that with our attorney, put that bid package out. So while that's collecting bids, we're going through those. I would hope that this could be a parallel to hire a consultant, talk to a consultant, and develop our vision of what we want to get from this meeting, get the meeting scheduled, get it posted out there, give plenty of time and notice, and then it happened this spring. So a parallel.
So we
with
would
it.
hold off the pavilion, we would hold off the bathrooms till that exercise gets done.
Right, and I wouldn't say in the next 2 months, we know the price of the bathrooms and the pavilion are going to be well over 10 grand. So that's not something that I can go out in the next 2 months and get you a decision, a vote, and we start building those in the next 2 months. That's going to be something that's a little bit longer just because of our policies and procedures we have in place. We first need to come up with a design. If we get a design, if you're not getting something that's stock from a company such as our playground company we worked with, we're going to have to hire an architect to get a pavilion design that you guys would like. It's going to be over 10 grand. I'm going to have to ask permission from the council and get multiple bids. So that alone will take time. Tracy?
Do you have an idea of how much this consulting would be?
So I think that this is something that I can shop around and get you guys some numbers in a pretty quick manner of, for a one-time engagement and then let's call it 15 hours of prep time with town staff. This is just hypothetical, but 15 hours of prep time with town staff, a one-time engagement, and then time to submit a report back. I can go out there with that scope, get you guys some numbers, and we can review it. I'm hoping that it would fall under a 10 grand. I can't imagine it would be much more. That's something we can work with Roberto on, pulling it from possibly even the CIP. I know it's not, an exact improvement, but it is a step in our improvement process.
The last master plan was about 15 grand.
Okay,
And we would not be going that elaborate.
okay, all right.
We have worked with some planning consultant firms in the past, so I would start there and reach out to them. I would also reach out to some of my peers in other towns and ask them if they've used anybody recently. This person would really act as a mediator. They would be there to engage the community, ask them to answer questions, encourage them to share thoughts and feelings that, you know, you might feel more comfortable sharing it with the third party than you would coming up to myself or one of you, because you know, they might feel we have certain opinions.
Everyone keeps looking at me. I'm tired of that.
Okay, so with that, I don't want to continue to belabor, so I want to go around the dais. I don't know who you guys want to start with, but I want you guys to list out your homework activity, which was what your top 3 or 4 priorities would be. And I'm going to write them on the back side of the board, so then we can go from there and prioritize and select as a group.
I understood the assignment. I've got paper.
Sean, you want to start?
Sure.
I love it.
Yep.
I was gonna say, no, I did not go into that.
I was
Picture for
challenged.
Joe.
Planner by trade,
Hey, Emily, if
Three.
you give a picture to Joe.
I'll get a picture of it.
Okay.
No, mine. I literally did not write that.
So everybody got a copy of it? And I assume this is going to be an ongoing conversation, so I'll just hit the highlights. So this would be to augment, when I look at the CIP right now, we have sort of, what do you call it? Our streetscape is going to constantly need maintenance. Our police department is going to constantly need cruisers. Those are sort of regular,
Baked in.
what I'm looking for. What's that, Joe?
Baked in.
Yeah, baked in, things that just have to be sort of a constant. And I think was the one off that you said. So what I identified as something sort of high impact, I would call these from my military days, high impact projects. The sidewalk, obviously, we're under contract to do that. That has our ARPA funding. So here I have a couple projects, tentative timelines, funding sources, and some general notes about it. I think on the town park, what I understood was that with the building coming down, we would replace it with the pavilion more or less in tandem, and also the bathrooms as well. So what I put in here was the design and construction of the pavilion in conjunction with the demolition. The idea being is that, and this is getting overly technical, but when the building comes down and that land is reclaimed, when we go to disturb the land again, it creates a different requirement. So the idea would be if you did them in tandem in the pavilion, if it was going to be over the foot, one of the ideas was to put it over the old footprint of the old building. You could do that at the same time and claim credit for that impervious surface and limit the ability to kick in some of the stormwater. So this would be challenging Katie and others to say there are some opportunities to try to cost save, get some high impact projects that we can do in relatively short term with the dollar amounts, the profit monies that we already have. But that would require, as Emily already said, we would have to get it out of design. And I put in here starting with the ARB. So those sort of the town park, the 3 major components, the pavilion, the park building demolition, the bathroom design, is there enough support for that absent this planning exercise to move that quickly, or do we feel a planning exercise is necessary before we make decisions on the pavilion and the bathrooms? Again, there's a cost savings here and maybe earlier delivery if we're able to time those together. Next is the town center complex. Costs are going up from year to year. Do we go ahead and pull the trigger? If I understand, we're pretty close, right? We've finished up. That's why I asked the $50,000 earlier. Do we have the ability to put it out to bid, look at our financing options, and maybe even starting bidding this fall? The only thing I have here is notes, as Emily talked about the security features. If we're having to consolidate the front door, does that tweak our site plan or not?
So,
We don't have to answer that right now, but it's just something to think about, so.
I was just gonna real quick say, we can move on the exterior once council is ready to fund the construction of it, so that can be a great budget discussion that we have this coming month or two when we start working on that with Roberto. And then the second question of it, kind of the security and the interior, we can pull up our redesign of what we already have shelved, and that can be that phase 2 approach, and we can get it done. The two will marry up together. We planned the exterior to match the interior and the elevator.
So kind of the priority right now is low-hanging fruit to sidewalk, potentially low-hanging fruit to town park, town center complex. That's a heftier discussion. It's an expensive project. But I think we're in a place where we can pull the trigger. Town signage, we've had this in the CIP for a while. This I mentioned during the demolition discussion. How are we helping our businesses, right? I want to say, Emily, last time she walked away. Do you remember the brown sign on 66, the historic district signage? That was like 15 grand, wasn't it?
Yes, so I have old numbers, I can get updated numbers. The bigger monument signs require structural engineering, so they're between 15 to 30 grand depending on size.
Okay. Point being, our boundaries are becoming indistinguishable between the data centers and the other bookended projects, where the town starts and town ends. Having that historic sign on the highway directs us in, and that's why I brought up TOT, Joe, because I had other ideas for the TOT monies. So we pulled some of the TOT monies to go into that signage, and also our gateway and wayfinding. We already had gateway and wayfinding in our CIP, and that was a little over 100 grand. Oh, never mind. Take out the town signage above town hall. That's the CIP I'm pulling from. Last thing, just a series of consultant services. We already talked about the town center update design. Do we want to go ahead and update the plans that we already have? The master plan update, I would call it an update, just reaffirm. We did a lot of background information with the previous plan we can probably recycle. Comprehensive plan update, that's been sitting on the books for years. Is that something we can contract out? And then Emily already talked about, going back to the master plan would be including phasing and funding. Parking center, public parking, I would agree. I think some of the redevelopment challenges we're having right now is parking. You eat up all your buildable space by asphalt, so what are the opportunities? We did do a parking study a while back, but it's well outdated by now. So again, do we want to direct consultant services? Can we use TOT monies for that? Can we use surplus monies? Can we use other proffer dollars? We have some proffer dollars for town administration. I don't know if those proffer dollars, I can't remember how much. Roberto, you remember how much proffers for town admin between the two projects? It's like 100 grand, isn't it? Okay. Anyway, we have. Not even that much? Oh, but anyway, we pull from some other dollar amounts to help with these consulting services. So those would be what I would call our immediate impact projects, and then continue to do the, Joe, what did you call them? Baked in projects that we just have to keep a part of every budget, so, thanks.
Would you say yours is outlined in your preference of 1, 2, 3, 4, like that?
Correct. I would almost move town signage up under sidewalks, because I feel like that's something we could probably move on fairly quickly without too much time into it. Thanks for your time.
Next in line, Mary, you want to go?
Oh, excellent. All right, so I did not come with a chart. But I do feel like what I view as a town priority based on, my perspective would be the town park. Ensure that that's thought out, planned. I'm not opposed to the consultant idea, but I definitely want this to be usable space and as soon as possible. Another topic that I feel like is constantly being highlighted to me, both in our events and the growth that we're experiencing with the numerous businesses and everything like that. Public parking is such an issue because, again, like we talked about, limited parking for business lots. I'm sure we all drive up Jefferson Street away from the railroads. And we see that empty lot sort of being utilized as an impromptu parking lot, and how many cars fit in there is quite immense and concerning, because that is not what its intended purpose is. And I think that it is our duty to ensure that these cars have a safe and designated space to park. And in hearing some suggestions from Emily's conversation earlier, I would wonder if we would want to secure public parking and address that concern before addressing the pavement here at Town Hall, if we are going to conjoin anything or at any point. I'm not sure if that's what you were alluding to, if neighbors would impact that.
I was thinking that we would build out our site first, that additional parking would not stop
Be as
us from doing
effective.
this. We're ready to move on this once we identify the funding.
Okay.
It's all been engineered from stormwater, curb and gutter,
Okay.
you name it, it's
Okay.
there. What we could do if we acquire land, let's say north of our property on Jefferson Street, is once that's engineered and designed, you could do a tie-in and a simple curb break could be designed in. So they could tie together, but it would not stop us from doing this.
Okay. And then my next priority would be town center, because I feel like if we put a priority on public parking, which is vastly needed, starting that snowball down the hill would not prevent us from doing the town center. But I do feel like that needs to be started sooner than later, because as we know, like, real estate is just constantly becoming less available and more expensive. So I think that if we started addressing that issue by, doing, I don't know what we have to do to secure property. I don't know any of that. So if we started that process, right, and then that would not prevent us from doing the town center, which you said is pretty much ready to go. But those are my top three. But I certainly feel like it's a prerogative to get this park up and running.
Okay, I guess I also don't have notes to hand out, so we know for next time, though.
You came early and
Joe
prepared.
challenged me to be prepared at the next meeting, so I rose to his challenge.
I guess I kind of took a little bit of a higher level approach to this, but I'll kind of bring it back, because I think it plays into a lot of what we've already talked about. The number one thing for me is pedestrian safety. I think I've seen, just too many things, that kind of disturb me. Whether it be school buses being run on I hate to say it, a fairly regular basis. Just educational concepts of when somebody can turn when a school bus is at that intersection. It blows my mind that that's still not understood. More and more, it's interesting, I've seen, especially Green Hill Crossing currently. When I moved in, everybody had young kids. Well, our kids got older and a lot of us stayed, but now some people are moving out and we're getting the young kids back. And we're starting to see a lot more bicycles being ridden around town. So, so I always think about it as public safety and pedestrian safety is very important to me. I kind of put the public parking in that category a little bit, because if you kind of take it outside the neighborhoods and you go into the town, whether that be the farmer's market, whether that be, the fact that we do have more businesses now and people are starting to kind of cross back and forth and cross the roads a little bit more and walk around, I think having a centralized place plays right into that safety aspect, as well as being something that is just absolutely necessary for us as a town. So I kind of put them together. I would say kind of after that, I do agree. And I think, again, a lot of this stuff overlaps with the park. I think this has been something that's, I think it's fantastic that we have that property. I think the more that we can continue to build that out and focus on that and make it something special for our residents and our visitors, I think is really important. So I definitely think that needs to be a priority as well. And the third thing I would actually list out is something that's not on here yet, but is just, and we talked about this a little bit, is the communication plan, right? Is really finding some things that we can do to be far more proactive, up to and including. I know, Mr. Mayor, I know you do your walk with the mayor. I think just getting out there and doing more things like that, where we're doing face-to-face communication, I think the more that we can use, we're light years above where we were a couple of years ago, only with social media. As a resident, I know that. But interesting feedback I got recently was, hey, I can't get to the information that town hall's posting. It's not coming up in my feed because all I see is the stories about advertising all the local businesses, and somehow the feed, and I would say my own Facebook feed, I've seen that trend a little bit. So I think just really working on and kind of rolling up our sleeves and saying, how can we better communicate? And I know that that's something that a lot of our residents want to see as well. So that's what I've got.
Quick question, when you said more face-to-face communication as well, are you talking in terms of
As an entire town, or specifically, is that something a goal of council members having more active leadership?
It's certainly a personal goal of mine.
Okay.
It is definitely a personal goal of mine, but I would answer that question all of the above.
Okay.
I think it's about, and I'm not just saying I have every answer right now, but I think it's about putting our heads together as part of our communication plan and determining what does that look like for us as a council.
Okay. Well, Joe, do you want to go next?
Okay. So I took my assignment seriously and I read what you sent us. It was actually pretty refreshing. It was good to read. I approached this, I guess, from a higher level view as well. I thought back to when we developed strategic plans for the first time in this town in 2014 with Mike Chandler. And so somewhere along the way, we have to consider confirming, reaffirming, whatever word you want to use, what the mission, values, and the vision of the town is, right? That's the kind of the soft stuff, but that kind of drives everything that we do. So somewhere along the way, we got to consider that. And I thought it was kind of interesting. Back in my day when I was in school, it was a SWOT analysis. Now they call it a SWOC. So instead of threats, now it's challenges, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Somewhere along the way, that is a good exercise to do as well. But anyway, I digress. I looked at it from infrastructure, public safety, transportation, and systems. A systems approach, okay? What you guys developed with respect to the sidewalk and the town park, I consider infrastructure. So I would agree that the sidewalk and the town park, to me, is the number one priority. I think, at least for me, number two would be transportation and public safety. I think we really have to take a hard look at the traffic we have in town. Others have mentioned pedestrian safety, and all the other elements that we can bring to bear to slow people down and to enhance the walkability of town. I think that's critical for folks in town as well as folks who come visit us, getting into town. And part of that is the parking dilemma. But with respect to parking, how does the town center campus, or at least the outside of it, relate to parking as well? I mean, I know there is an incremental growth in the number of parking spaces depending on what we do outside of the building area. So I'm wondering, how does that relate? Is that going to be part of what you're looking at when you start to examine places for parking or potential properties?
So are you referencing if we were to do our exterior parking lot, how many additional spaces could go towards public parking? Is that how you're?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can pull the plan back up and follow up with you guys on a number, but it does not significantly increase our number of parking spots that we have available with our goal, my goal of getting the interior of the town hall completed once and for all, and the full rentability of the upstairs with no ADA restrictions anymore, then I think that we would not want to utilize our parking lot for additional public parking because we would want spaces for our tenants. Right now, I would say we're underparked. We certainly have plenty of parking available should somebody, as they often do, park in our lot and go to the hotel because they don't want to park behind the hotel. So we allow public parking now, we don't enforce it. And I would think that we would maintain that and we wouldn't enforce it until it became an issue that our tenants don't have adequate parking.
So I think you've already answered the need to have somebody come in and figure out what we're going to do about parking and where we're going to park. So thank you for that. So with the whole transportation issue, we have to deal with not just the public safety aspect, the crosswalks, slowing people down, but also the turn lanes at the crossroads. The turn lanes at the crossroads. To me, that's something that we need to consider. I know that's going to be a big funding item in the future, but we should be planning for that, maybe more long-term. But we
Jefferson.
need to figure out ways to alleviate
Jefferson and Washington.
Jefferson
and
Road.
improve the traffic flow.
Physical.
Okay, yeah, sorry, you said Crossroads and I'm thinking Crossroads Village.
No, I meant
Okay,
real crossroads.
yes, the original ones.
Yes,
Okay.
Carolina and Washington.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
And lastly, I'll make it simple. For me, also, it's less sexy stuff, but it's really important. It's part of the backbone of everything that the town does. Is the systems that we have in place that trigger the need and the timing for things to be done. So, in other words, having this asset inventory in place, where we know what the useful life of some of the elements that we own are and what's the replacement cycle for that. I think that's really important to helping us budget in the future and as well as budget capital-wise. Also calendarizing processes, right? One of the things that's kind of frustrating for me is this comp plan is probably out of date since the day I moved into town. And if that's really our guide, we've fallen woefully short. So this would kind of help us, I think, identify the timing and the needs that can help drive a lot of what we've heard earlier, like the communication plan and other things like that. So that's kind of generally what I thought about.
Okay.
Is that enough?
Yes, thank you.
One follow to that. Hey, Joe, with the town center parking, would there be an opportunity for shared parking where you could, businesses during the day and then public parking at night? Or I'm sorry, Emily and Joe, that's maybe something to think about too. Is that a way to maybe?
So maybe that's something we
I thought-
consider.
I'm sorry, but didn't we adopt something about shared parking?
So I think we adopted something and then I think it's also since been removed.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sidebar conversation on that one, but yes, it would allow the opportunity. I think so. Is it having to handle multiple hats? I think it could provide some off-hour parking and still do that. Yeah. So thanks.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
And just real quick on a parking thing, just Mary, I wanted to clarify the parking in the open gravel lot. That's an agreement between two business owners and it is paid for parking. I want everybody to know it's not being treated as a
Sure.
come for all. I know
But
it looks like
but as
it.
a person just driving through, it
Right.
looks like
Absolutely.
just like, oh, I can park here. And so
Yeah.
visitors to our town may think it's public
yes.
parking. So that's what that was alluding to.
Alexander?
All right, I think I'm about to repeat some of the same things that
No
Joe
worries.
mentioned. So top priority, I would say to continue working on developing the town park, right? So in addition to the pavilion, right, let's figure out what other things that we can put in there that are beneficial to the town residents. And when it comes to determining what town residents, what their preferences are, Emily, instead of hiring a consultant, I think another approach might be we can do another survey as well, give them options, right? But at the same time, have some sort of an event, including the ice cream track and so forth at the park, and invite the residents to come and maybe on-site complete the questionnaire and have discussions with us and let them share with us their preferences as well, right? Because I'm thinking at the end of the day, the consultant is trying to elicit the same preferences from the residents as well, right? But of course, they're professionals. Maybe they have a better way of getting at it. And second priority for me is definitely deals with the flow of traffic and pedestrian safety on Washington and Jefferson or Old Carolina, right? And as Joe mentioned, I don't know what can be done about it, if we can add additional lanes, right, turn lanes if possible. And also I think I had talked to you about the designated turn signals, enabling those. I know it's going to require a VDOT study, right? But I think we need to look into that and possibly have a better flow of traffic on both those two streets. And is this mainly to prioritize what we should invest on or anything and everything in general? Okay. Well, the third thing, Roberto is going to like this, is I know based on what we're planning right now, what we're discussing, it looks like we're going to have, we're going to have some expenses, definitely. But at some point, to me, it's obvious that our revenues are going up, right? Continuing to go up, and especially once Crossroads is built out and so forth, I think we're going to also have additional revenue. So at some point, I would like to see us leverage that revenue to offset the tax burden on residents, meaning not take it down all the way to zero, but reduce the percentage.
I love this guy.
Right. Right, Roberto? We can work on that. That's doable. And again, I understand that we have some expenses coming up. We need to find a way to pay for those things. But ideally, it would be nice. It's on my, wish list. Let's put it that way.
Okay, anything else?
I think that's all. I think the top three, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Tracy then?
Are you ready?
I am.
All right, so park development specifically to the pavilion. I also see pedestrian safety in that. How are we going to get there safely, walking?
Okay.
The interior of the town center, helping enable a better a rental resource. And then parking, I absolutely understand it's a necessity, not only for pedestrians, but for business.
Okay, I think we got a lot of good consensus. I kind of went with the park, I'm looking for a master plan update and a phased design build approach of tackling that master plan so that it's no longer than a 3-year investment. I put a date on that one, so that would be a hurdle, get it in 3 years. Town center, immediate, I would like to, since we have the design already taken care of for the parking lot, get that parking lot built. That helps the rental businesses, right, that are around us, like Cupcake Heaven, and actually gives us a better flow of traffic through our parking lot. Long-term, we could start to address the building, but right now, my long-term view does not see a good benefit for the buck of making that a priority. What's that?
Not make which part a priority?
The interior of the building, improvements to the building. Parking lot, immediate, I would like to start to look for land and set up a purchase for a public. Long-term would be with that land, coming up with a build-out to include, the public parking as well as some type of public utility maintenance type of building and storage to replace what's going to be demolished by the tail end of the park, because I have a feeling all those storage buildings will end up disappearing within the master plan.
You mean the garage?
Yeah, the garage and that kind of stuff, yeah. Because it doesn't belong there, really, when you really think of what the purpose of the park should be, right? Another item I have is town operations. I think we should be going through an immediate investment to kind of do some of the systematic concepts that Joe is talking about. I think we need a complete asset list to understand what we actually own, what condition they're in, what we project the life cycle of this stuff being, so we can actually trickle this back to our budget and actually show how we're funding money into these pockets to cover the replacement of these things or improve, any type of improvement that would be needed on them. It pretty much boils back to my framework, right? The framework that I've been preaching for a while. But in that would be, consultant to maybe help with the comp plan update, communications plan, and actually, like I said, tying the CIP. So that is an actual plan that shows how we're replacing or improving our assets with our budget line items.
So I think we can see the trends. Park is in everybody's priorities. So I think it's pretty clear to go ahead and label that as number 1. Consistent across the board. One thing I want to quickly mention, and I'm going to plan to give more of a explanation on Monday night in my admin report, is Chief and I just had a meeting with VDOT regarding crosswalks and pedestrian safety. So he and I, again, Monday night, we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth, but we ran through some ideas of additional areas to put crosswalks. Long story short, we were shot down on reasons why we don't have them there due to sight lines for cars, cresting over the bridge, and visibility for a pedestrian. It's not always an adult in the crosswalk. It sometimes is your little ones. And so they do look at that range of eyesight there. You should be seeing, hopefully soon, more crosswalk signage going in. They did come to us. That was one of the very first things they said in our meeting last week, is we have a lack of it. They will take the burden of putting it in, and that's on them. So they're going to do that. we asked about the flashing lights and the different options for making the Taj Mahal, if you will, of a crosswalk. While we think that's really great and that it draws people's eye in, what they shared with us is they've done the studies and they have actually tried implementing it over on Cat Harpin with that interesting crosswalk they have there. They never had anybody hit. When they put the flashing lights in, they had, was it 2 accidents, Chief? 2 pedestrians were struck. I do think both made it and were okay, but 2 were struck because it gave a false sense of safety for the pedestrian in the crosswalk. So they highly, highly encouraged us not to use flashing lights in our crosswalks because drivers just get so accustomed to them. And then the pedestrians also have a false sense of safety that if the light's flashing, the car is going to stop. So I just want to share that feedback. To let you guys know, we are working on pedestrian safety. Chief and I are actively doing it where we can. So, Mayor, do you have a question?
Yeah, how about other abatement methods, like, a table crosswalk? Does
yes.
VDOT allow
I
that in
asked for
major
that
roads?
too. I did. They will not put one in on Washington Street. It is a major road, and as much as we want to deny it, it is the backup should 66 close. So they will not allow or permit or approve any application for installing a speed table on Washington Street or any other raised measure along Washington Street. The reason that the Jefferson Street one was approved is that was through Prince William Transportation, and it sounded like there were some exceptions to the scenario there. So
What about rumble strips?
I didn't specifically ask about rumble strips, but we could ask them about additional marking or rumble strips.
They have them on 15 up north of Leesburg, that little town. I forget the name of it, Lovettsville or.
Waterfront?
Okay.
Luckett.
Yeah, we can
Buckets.
ask them about that. I did ask them, Mary, specifically, I showed them where I would want a crosswalk on Jefferson Street from your neighborhood over. That was the one that came up about the cresting of the bridge and the sight lines there. And then also it was identified that there is a safe pedestrian access from your neighborhood down Hunting Path and on Washington Street to get in. And so that's where they would encourage that versus the crosswalk and the sight line issue.
We're off topic a little bit. Sorry.
I'm going to keep my comments to myself right now because they're not pleasant. So you tell me.
And I hear you. I shared some disappointment with the news that I was getting back from VDOT. I thought surely if we want to put in additional crosswalks and we want to provide more safe crossing points along our streets for our pedestrians because we're a walking community, why would this not be accepted? But Chief and I were met with a hard no, and this is not something that we would ever approve. And then we were given the example of Cat Harpin and some of the issues they've had there. So
Was there any kibosh on the sidewalk across from Joe's neighborhood to the park and then like from QBE?
there's not yet been kibosh on our crosswalk across. We still have to do the crosswalk study though with VDOT, and we have
Okay.
to prove the need there, and that's part of it. From Green Hill though over to QBE property, that's not going to happen until you have a sidewalk on QBE property that has the handicap accepting ramp over there. So until we have improvements on both sides, they're not going to permit a crosswalk because there's no safe place for them to land, essentially. I know they could walk in on the private drive, but the way VDOT sees it, there's no sidewalk.
There's traffic calming measures too, but it's narrowing the streets and stuff like that.
Real quick question,
Yes.
probably very unpopular, by the way. Was there a relation to the cresting and the speed limit in regards to a crosswalk? Is it because we're 25 and there's correlation between that speed limit and reaction time? Or that was not even,
No. Line of
Okay.
sight.
Minus-
so it's
Yep.
purely sight, okay.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
and I encourage everybody, if you don't drive that way often, I
kind of questioned them when they gave me this response. I was like, it can't really be that bad. But when you're driving and you're going north, headed out of town on Jefferson Street, and you're crossing over the bridge right before you start really crossing, think about on the other side of the bridge where the sidewalk or crosswalk could possibly be on that side or this side. Think about if you had a 4 or 5-year-old, somebody short, if you would be able to see them over that. That was what they were trying to explain to us.
I just didn't know if they put in reaction time.
Yep, and I didn't mean to derail any conversation. I just wanted you guys to know we recently had the conversation, so it is there. Okay, so the other trends that we're seeing, it sounds like everybody is in support of some type of analyzing and determining what could be next on public parking and traffic in general. Is that a healthy agreement there? Head nods? I think
That's
That's
very
number
popular.
three.
I
That's
went
going to
here.
be our top 3. So, public parking, Marshawn, you said it. I think Joe mentioned it. Transportation.
Yeah, in the context of transportation, yeah.
Alexander, did you kind of mention it with traffic?
I do not.
Do not, okay. And then the last one, town center. So do you guys want to talk through a ranking system? I know it's getting late. Do you want to pick it back up next week? What do you guys still have left in your bandwidth tonight?
What your goal is? You wish to come back to us with the top 3 and sort of the,
So what I would like is that we determine our priority, 1, 2, 3, and then I can prepare and come back with you what I think would be our next obvious steps of that, where we could briefly talk now and you guys could say, for the park, we would like to see the next obvious step being the house coming down and whatever type of community engagement session we're gonna do, have that scheduled in April. So that's kind of what I'm hoping is that you guys, we discuss the expectation of it.
do you want the,
There's also gonna be some, when you look back, there's gonna be a little discussion of how you guys are gonna fall into each of the priorities and where we're gonna tap into council assisting.
do you want the ARB to begin their task on the house and the pavilion, or do you wait till we do because we can start doing that soon. We can talk about that later, but we can start discussing that next
I
month.
think that was gonna be a February ARB meeting item anyways.
Okay.
I'll hold over from January's.
That's right, thanks.
Me. I would feel better if I had next steps and some sort of realistic, what those next steps relate to in timeline, because I can sit here and say, I want it all done in the next 12 months, but not really know what that would entail in order to better allow me to discuss my opinion. That's just me.
So you guys wanna pick it back up next week?
Personally, I think it gives us a chance for you to digest it all and lay it out and bring it back to us next week, and then we can confirm it.
So I can do that. Just know that the attachment probably won't make it in the agenda, just so I have this week to work on it. Because Kim's gonna want that agenda out before Friday.
Yeah. Yep.
That's fine.
So,
Just email it.
will do. Ahead of time. Anything else? Do you guys wanna parting words on strategic plan?
I'll belabor for a second. I appreciate the philosophical approach, and I would be of the plan, a goal without a plan is just a wish. I would just like the council to think about, when I talk about high impact funds and the infrastructure. I think we have the ability to do high impact projects. I think we call them sexy, but those are the clear projects that are going to show the investment that we're making. And we've not made that significant investment in a period of time. So I encourage the council to think about how do we balance with setting up the next council for sort of a long-range plan and sort of the immediate, do we have the ability, the immediate capacity to provide the infrastructure that we're already behind serving? And again, thinking about all the residents that we're bringing into town. So I hope that we can think outside the box and figure out how to touch on each of these next week. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to join Marshawn on that. I think it's important because it will be a primer for the next council, without a doubt. I think it's going to be important. I think we have to be careful because I know there's always the expectation that we're going to try to do everything all at once, right? I mean, we've had that problem in the town before, the next shiny object. And prioritizing it with your base 3 makes a lot of sense. And I think that you've done a good job, Emily, with laying it out that way. The other aspect of it is the funding side, which is going to take some considerable work depending on what exactly we define as those 3 priorities and future priorities. This is not all going to be, in my opinion, and I'm just shooting from the hip here, it's not all going to be funded out of the budget at this point. There may be some consideration for some debt obligations in order to do some of the work that we'd like to get done for the next council. So keep that in mind.
Anybody else with any comments? Are you good? Okay. On that note, we go to the next agenda item.
Move to adjourn.
Got a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. 6 after 10.
Last board meeting.
Chief, I'll give you a call during the week, Chief. Because we're not meeting this Wednesday, not until next Wednesday.